I'm turning my microphone on, and we're resuming our session. First thing on our matter is Legislative Committee Matters with Governor Kyle Cicchetti and our Outreach and Legislative Affairs Manager, Sanjay Walvakar. Take it away, Governor Cicchetti. And what's your... You want to go sit down there? All right, great.
Hi, thank you. I apologize I was late. This is the two legislative committees, Legislative Review Committee and Legislative Board of Governors Committee. As I mentioned earlier today, we had a joint meeting since the last Board of Governors meeting. It was a very good meeting. I think it was the first time that the Board of Governors met with the Legislative Review. And in the past, at least in my observation, I think part of the trouble and inefficiencies and struggle with the two committees has always been that we haven't talked with one another. Either committee has not understood what the other committee has done or does. And I was very pleased with the outcome, although several members had to participate by telephone. Still, it was a very good discussion, cross-discussion between these two committees. Are we doing the proposal to right now as well?
First legislative session.
Okay, so we have two parts to our presentation today. The first part will be a description of what is going on right now with the legislation that we've been watching, that we've sponsored, and our outreach manager will give a presentation on that. And then secondly, we have a proposal for consideration that goes back several years to further refinements to the Legislative Review Committee that will, I believe, enhance our ability to consider and vet legislation. Part of the discussion this morning with Governor Stevens was a concern that not only the legislation be vetted with appropriate sections and committees, but also ABA resolutions, which we are now considering as well. And I think the proposal that we have to consider today, I think serves that purpose by expanding our committee a bit to what we had before, how it operated before. We are going to look at some changes and revisions based on quorum issues. But I think it's a move in the right direction. So that'll be in a minute. I'll turn it over to our Outreach and Legislative Affairs Manager, Sanjay Walvakar, for a description of our legislation and where it's at.
Thank you. I'll just add a few notes to the report that's already in your materials. The session began on Monday of this week. This is a short session scheduled for 60 days and ending on March 13th. Since December, we've referred almost 400 bills to sections, and we're tracking over 130 bills on behalf of sections. The report I submitted in your materials has some further information on a few of those bills. A quick update on our bar request legislation, Senate Bill 6037. That bill had a hearing in the Senate Law and Justice Committee on Tuesday and was moved out of the committee this morning. Mike Hutchings from the Corporate Act Revisions Committee of the Business Law section testified in favor of the bill on Tuesday. Michelle Gonzalez from the Washington Women's Commission also testified in favor of the bill. No one signed in or testified in opposition. The bill should be pulled from Rules Committee and receive a floor vote shortly, and I'll let the Board Legislative Committee know if and when that happens. I also wanted to note that I was with Governor Cicchetti in Olympia yesterday for meetings with legislators and our contract lobbyist. We had productive discussions with members of the House and Senate Judiciary Committees about legislative priorities and bar participation in the legislative process. We're scheduled to meet with another group of legislators in just a few days, and hopefully we'll have the same productive discussions with them. We've already had some good engagement with sections on a number of bills. Again, some of those are outlined in your report, and we'll continue to work with sections to address their needs in Olympia over the next couple months.
Excuse me, Sandy, can you just tell me, I see where your synopsis is. Did you put the
actual cases, bills in here, in our materials?
So in the 2020 legislative session report, I highlighted 3 bills as of January 5th that sections have taken
Okay.
action on.
I-
So that's
Okay, thank you.
6028.
I apologize.
That's all right. So we'll continue to work with sections to address their needs in Olympia over the next couple months. I know we're all looking forward to a successful session ahead, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have or move into the Legislative Review Committee proposal.
Mr. President, I have a question. Hi, Sanjay. I was just wondering what the reception seemed to be to the testimony that was given. Did you get any read from the committee, or were there any hard questions or good questions? Or?
There were a couple good and hard questions from a couple of folks on the Law and Justice Committee. So Senator Linda Wilson, who President-elect Cicchetti and I met with yesterday, had some questions regarding some data that the Washington Women's Commission had cited that explained that corporate boards that had more women on the board tended to be more profitable. So she was asking some questions about that data and was hoping to receive some of those reports for the committee to review. And I know that Senator Holy and Senator Patton on the Law and Justice Committee also had some questions for Mike Hutchings about the genesis of the bill.
Was there anyone else who testified either in favor of or against it? Do
It
you
was
recall?
just Mike Hutchings and Michelle Gonzalez in favor.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
What's the prognosis regarding, I think it was 1788 last time? What's that look like this time around?
So the consistent message we've received, and I don't know if President-elect Cicchetti wants to address this, or I'm happy to give a brief statement. So the consistent message we've received from our contract lobbyist and the folks we've talked to in Olympia is that there is no indication that there's any sort of bar structure-related legislation coming down the pipeline, 1788 or otherwise.
I just have a comment. I know how time-consuming this can be, and it's like on Friday you get this bill and you have to make a decision and a synopsis by Monday. So thank you for your work, and thank you, Governor Cicchetti, for putting me on the Legislative Committee. But I just wanted to say, wonderful job, and we really appreciate it.
Yes.
Thank you.
The chair highlights that comment. Thank you very much, actually.
Thank you.
A tough job. Well, with no further questions, we'll end on that wonderful applause. And we'll move on to Legislative Review Committee Policies and Procedures.
Okay. So this is the second half of our presentation. In your materials, you should have a proposal that we put together for action today, I believe. As I mentioned, over the course of the last 4 or 5 years, we've tried to. At one point, the Legislative Review Committee was at risk of being sunsetted because, quite frankly, nobody understood what its purpose was, I think, at least as far as the Board of Governors was concerned. And over the last 3 years, I think the purpose of the Legislative Review Committee has been highlighted and appreciated by the Board of Governors, and their ability to vet legislation, propose legislation, and ensure that the people who are most interested in any particular bill are consulted first before the Bar Association is asked to sponsor or support. and they've continued to do that. And I think that was especially evident in the last joint meeting that we had, where at least the members of the Board of Governors Committee could see the work, the good work that the Legislative Review Committee does for this organization. The proposal does a number of different things to expand the number of folks that can serve on the Legislative Committee. We had a plethora of applicants last year, many that we had to turn away, and I hated to do that, or at least not invite them to be voting members, only because I see the benefit of having a slightly larger group, larger geography, larger practice areas, a bigger net for which to air issues and figure out whether we're going to see landmines in the future. And so the proposal primarily does that. It does take away a couple of the restrictions that were placed a few years ago, but I think it's for the better, for the good of the both committees. I'd urge your support for it, and then if our outreach manager has any thoughts, I'd invite those as well.
Okay. Is there any members of the audience not seated at the table who would have comment on this matter? Seeing none, are there any governors or executive staff members who have comment on this matter? Executive Director Nevitt with a question.
Governor Schicchetti, I know you referenced this morning, so I know that in the past sometimes developing a quorum for a really large committee can be a challenge, and I'm just curious if you guys have discussed that and sort of thought through how you'll handle it.
So I've been a member of the Legislative Review Committee since I believe 2003. And in the my early years, we all had quorum issues when we were much larger. Recently, we've been much smaller, and we still have those quorum issues. So I am not so sure that the size of the committee will have any bearing on that whatsoever. What I am concerned about is the overlap between the Board of Governors Committee and the Legislative Review Committee. I do think that it merits some discussion long term about whether we cannot talk about anything without a quorum, or whether it just restricts our voting. And I know that's a larger discussion, not one for today, but for the purposes of the Legislative Review Committee, when you're having folks come and testify on behalf of a bill, and then we have to sit and see if we can make quorum, and then sometimes when we don't, then we have to send them away and hopefully arrange for another meeting. And that's hugely disruptive. I prefer to have the discussion and then not be able to vote on it rather than turn people away. But again, that's a discussion for later. I don't believe any of the proposals that are in up for consideration today will have any effect on the quorum issue. So we will continue to look at that and make refinements as we go forward.
Governor Stevens.
So, are you moving this?
I suppose I could move it. I move for passage of the proposal as set forth in your materials.
A second?
A motion by Governor Schicchetti and a seconding by Governor Stevens. Are there any more further discussion or questions on the matter? Not seeing any. Mr. McPherson, please.
Can you remind me how
With
you...
3 minutes on your time, you may
That's okay.
address
It's very
the
brief.
board.
I just want to know what is the timeline for applying for the committee and so forth, so I can tell my organization and so just make sure it gets on their calendars so that they can make sure that we do have a legislative person in our group. So when do they try to get on there, Kyle?
Off the top of my head, I don't know, but
There
we
you go.
will
Let me know.
talk to Pam and get back to you.
Excellent. Actually, I guess that gives a question to me. So this will apply to the upcoming year, so that's why we need to know the answer. Because people are appointed terms begin by July 1st.
Yes.
So, okay, great. And those will be appointments made by the standard committee appointing process. Fantastic. Okay. Any other further comments or questions? Not seeing anything, having a motion and a second on the table, we will advance the question, which is to adopt the WSBA Legislative Review Committee Policies and Procedures document located on page 102 of your materials. Governor Clark.
Yes.
Governor Knight.
Aye.
Governor Swagel.
Aye.
Governor Hunter.
Aye.
Governor Tollefson.
Aye.
Governor Abell.
Aye.
Governor Peterson.
Aye.
Governor Angelvell.
Aye.
Governor Stevens.
Aye.
Governor Grabicki. Governor Grabicki.
Aye.
Thank you. Governor Kang.
Aye.
Governor Shichetti.
Aye.
Governor Higginson.
Aye.
With a unanimous vote, the motion passes.
Can
Adopted.
can I say one more thing before we move on?
Of course, Governor.
All right, and thank you for that. I think that will improve our organization. Those changes, you know, President Majumdar and I and Chief Disciplinary Counsel Inde and also Governor Clark did a little research on past presidents and trying to fill some gaps. And in that research, figuring out who our presidents were, going back to 1888, we did find a missing president called by the name of A.A. Hall. And you'll see an article in our March edition of, I don't know if it's Northwest Lawyer by now or Bar News, but Bar News. You'll see an article about Mr. A.A. Hall. He was our president in 1939 for a period of months. And during that research, he also served as the chair of the Legislative Committee back in April of 1939. And I ran across, as he was retiring his governorship, he wrote a little piece in the Washington Law Review, which was a portion of it was attributed to the Bar Association. And in it, he describes the Legislative Committee of 1939 and commending its work. He also said that the Bar Association did not directly sponsor any legislation of a controversial nature, limiting its sponsorship to correctional legislation about which there could be no contrariety of opinion. And I wonder, and I just throw this out, certainly perhaps that was appropriate for the time. We've gone back and forth on, controversial issues. And maybe that goes a little bit too far. So as we were moving forward and we're thinking about what best serves the Bar Association and our meetings yesterday with representatives and senators, part of that discussion was what would help them as they're considering legislation. And certainly, the folks that we talked to, many of whom were not experts in any particular area of the law. And as we saw with Mike Hutchins, who came in and talked about the Clark proposal, a lot of that is outside our area of expertise. And that it's a huge resource for our legislature to be able to depend on our members. And so part of our an effort led, I believe, by Governor Higginson is to open up our sections to be able to speak more with the legislature and maybe unchain them a bit so that it's clear that they might be speaking on behalf of a section, not necessarily for the Bar Association as a whole, but would be able to provide our representatives and senators with more information and expertise, which would not only improve, the Bar Association, I believe, but also, our entire state. So maybe not handling anything that has, a chance of adversarial position. I don't know, that might go too far, but I'm hoping that we can expand it so that we're helpful to the legislature and our members and the public for that matter. So I thank you for the passage of the proposal. I think that goes a long way. Thank you.
Thank you. And actually, before we close what I'm considering one large matter of legislative committee matters, I wasn't monitoring my email, but our broadcast manager forwarded me a question from someone who's observing us on the webcast, and I think this goes to Mr. Walvikar here. Is a question from the chair of the Civil Rights Law section, Molly Matter. The question was, bill on limiting female quota on boards. Do we know why this bill was introduced?
I think I might have to get back to her.
Okay, I'm going to forward this to you.
Perfect.
Thank you. Thank you. With that, I will move on to the next item, but there's two short announcements I'd like to make. I guess I'll make the bigger announcement first. The bigger announcement first is it's just become public news as of a little short while ago that last Thursday, I guess at the Supreme Court en banc hearing, Justice Charles Wiggins informed his colleagues that he would be retiring from the Washington Supreme Court, and he then informed the governor, and he has now informed the public. His last day in that service will be March 31st, 2020. We will be meeting, and I presume having dinner with him in March before he retires, but I wanted you all to be aware of that, and I will take what necessary steps there are to thank him for his service to our profession. Second, you'll also find on your tables very large pieces of paper. I believe I've been told they're 11 by 17. And we have more if people in the public would like to see. But what they are is an incredibly helpful data sheet, I think. It has all kinds of fabulous statistics about membership, median ages, fees paid, referrals to discipline, admission statistics, how many Rule 9s we have in the state, how many law clerks, programming issues, website statistics, Facebook statistics. I'll note that Facebook jumped from 5,100 last year to 14,945 this year. So I don't know what Director Nagowski, what dark magics Director Nagowski is engaging in, but fantastic work. I just noticed that statistic. So I hope you all find that educational and interesting. Next, we will move to appointment to the Client Protection Board. Each year, board chairs are appointed by the president-elect of the organization to serve the next year when they are in office. And this year, we had a resignation from this board, but my very strict reading of the bylaws is that the president-elect is the person who nominates the person to the board, and Governor Shichetti has promulgated a memo to you, and I guess I'll just turn it over to you.
Yes. Do you have the page number of that?
That is page number 103.
All right. And it's a one-page memo. It does omit the resume of Ms. Umland, which was provided today. It was out in the lobby area and in late materials. So I did appoint Ms. Umland. You heard from her today. Gave a very impressive presentation on behalf of her group. And so I would move for a approval of appointment of Ms. Umland as chair of that committee.
So moved.
I have a motion and a second? Yes? And any question or discussion on the matter? If there's no question about the president-elect's judgment, we'll move forward to a vote on the matter. Well, I guess we'll find out right now, won't we? Governor Clark.
Aye.
Governor Knight.
Aye.
Governor Swagel.
Aye.
Governor Hunter. Aye. Governor Tollefson.
Aye.
Governor Abell.
Aye.
Governor Peterson.
Aye.
Governor Angelville.
Aye.
Governor Stevens.
Aye.
Governor Grabicki.
Aye.
Governor King,
Abstain.
Governor Shichetti.
Aye.
You want the abstention recorded? Can you please record that. Governor Higginson.
Aye.
Thank you. With the unanimous votes of all the votes cast, the judgment of the president-elect is affirmed.